Often it's a very common thing when I work with people that we're at war with our body. There's a relationship like my body has failed me, so why would I want to connect with it? A few signs that you're stuck in your head is energy levels tend to drop, stress may be accumulating, aches and pains may be hanging around, your body has challenges to heal. Now, being stuck in your head isn't just about being intellectual and rational. It's often about not being connected to the body, not being connected to the present moment. And your brain is working overtime, trying to process so much: the past, the potential future, what's happening right now. It's like a flurry of static that really affects our health and our mental well-being, because the brain is one of the biggest consumers of energy in our whole body. So we're going to talk about how do we come back to the body? How do you get out of your head, come back to the body, so that we can then start to support the healing processes of the body, come back to the present moment, process things, traumas that may have happened. Sounds like a lot. It's a challenging journey in some ways, yet the longer you push it down, the more pressure that builds up inside. So if you would like to come back home to the body, get out of your head, then let's explore these 4 key areas. So I'll go straight in and we'll open up a conversation around this. The first point is about acknowledging the controller. Would you like to start this, Mark?
Yeah, yeah. In a way, it's pretty simple to observe. Like you wake up in the morning and you start to observe that every time you wake up, you feel in a way the same. Doesn't matter if it's good weather or bad weather or whatever happens. And it's like, oh, why I'm feeling the same all the time. This is already a good sign of to get a sense of what it means to be stuck in your head. It's just repeating the same thing. And what we mean with acknowledging the controller is just like to see that the controller which is doing that is just there to keep you safe, because this is what has been learned in the past to get through your day and to stay alive. And when you start to see that and stop fighting and just be there and say, okay, thank you that you're protecting me to keep me alive, then already things start to slow down, because you start really acknowledging the system for its work. And from this point on, already emotions from the past and all that stuff can be processed and already regulated on a level which is more than before, because you started to see it, you started to acknowledging it, you just put your awareness into this habit, which is just there to protect you.
Mm, yeah, like I see the controller as like a psychological representation of our primitive autonomic nervous system, survival mechanism. And yeah, like you said, it is inherently there to keep us safe. And it's important. Like, if we go back, we've inherited all of these survival instincts that have helped us evolve and survive over the years. Things like, that, living in Australia, there's a lot of poisonous animals here. I know that snakes are poisonous and I need to be aware of their presence. Because if I step on it, well, then it's, I could get bitten and then potentially die. So if
Yeah,
I didn't have that, then it would be problematic. But the bigger problem is, imagine if I then, because I've had a fear of snakes and I've worked through this, and it did have some physiological effects, particularly when I was out in nature. But imagine carrying that idea constantly: I'm going to get bitten by a snake. What effects that has on our body. And so, as an example, I lived in that reality for a little while because I had a traumatic experience where I almost stepped on a snake when I was younger. And so that moment, it was a very big kind of like emotional, physiological impact. And I didn't know how to resolve it. So it was just like anytime I would think of a snake, I would get triggered and it would be there. So I was living in this kind of threat-based reality that wasn't actually here and present. But all of my physiology was living as if it was. So like my brain, I was kind of like outside of the present because I was sensing threats based on that moment in the past, which was amplifying that experience. So what I needed to do was start to acknowledge that controlling part of me that was like, no, no, snake equals bad because of this experience. You don't want that to happen again. But if for example, I said, oh, I've got to get out of my head and get back to my body, and I don't acknowledge that part, then it's like I then create this battle with
Yeah.
myself. So acknowledging the controller for me is about identifying that part of us that wants certainty, that wants to know that we're safe. And so I had to acknowledge that happened, and that part of me really started to strengthen up. And it's basically saying, okay, well, if I don't know with absolute certainty that I'm safe, then I'm going to keep you, I'm going to, stay strong and keep you safe, and essentially create this bigger fear reality so you don't step outside of it and put yourself in a risk. So
Yeah.
it's almost like this little being able to see it and going, yes, I acknowledge that you're trying to keep me safe. And also, I see in this case, there's a good acronym for fear, which is false evidence appearing real, that this is not happening right now. So what I'm left with is the past experience. How do I process that? And that is in the body. So then we can come back to that and we've started to no longer battle, and we're coming back to, well, what were the feelings associated with these events that happened, that I then developed this heightened sense of control to protect myself.
Yeah. And just to make it practical, for example, chronic tension, it's the same mechanism. So you feel the sensation in the body of chronic tension. The brain wants to get rid of it and starts fighting against. Like, this is really a potential risk if this is still hanging around and blocking me in my life and all that stuff. If you don't start to acknowledge this part, this controller, you will get stuck in this cycle. It's just not real what's happening in that moment.
Yeah, it's and like what we're kind of working with here is in a way it's a process of desensitization, because we can
Yeah.
become hypersensitized. Like if you've had pain, tension, aches, like uncomfortable experiences in the body for a repeated period, and then you've tried to do this and that and the other thing to get better, and then none of it's worked, you then start to lose hope, and we can then start to dissociate from the experience. Basically, it's sort of like a belief, I'm never going to get better no matter how hard I try. So the only option I have is to disconnect and soldier on. And then
Yeah.
it can be really challenging to then come back to the body, because then there's can be fear associated of, well, now I'm going to feel all this uncomfortable stuff and I don't want to feel that. So then I'm going to look for ways to, and this is where, we can become like reliant on medication or reliant on even meditation, like reliant on,
Yeah.
not to say that meditation is a bypass, but it can be used that way. If all of these things are symptomatic of, I want to escape my experience because I'm in some ways not acknowledging and allowing what is here to be seen, heard, felt, experienced. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and that controller will come up and it'll give you all of these reasons. And this is where awareness of our own mind, awareness of ourselves, and clarity and belief on where we're going, what we really believe is possible, this is an important counterbalance to essentially kind of let that controller know, okay, I see what you're doing here. Thank you. And there is a deep knowing that I can heal, I can move forward, I can move through these scary things and fears, because I have a clear vision of where I'm going, and I believe that that is possible.
Yeah.
So that's we went pretty deep there, but
Yeah.
really useful. Just as a one last little practical point is, if you do experience being stuck in your head and you would like to connect back with your body, first just notice those parts of you that are holding on to control, that needs certainty. And it's just first acknowledge that it's there. You don't need to try and change it necessarily, but just notice that it's there rather than trying to push through it and override it. So the next point is connecting with the body. Now, we can start with this in a really simple and gentle way. What we want to basically do is shift from having this sort of externalized interpretation of all of the experiences of the body, like the looking at our body with judgment. And often it's a very common thing when I work with people that, like, we're at war with our body. It's like there's a relationship, like, my body has failed me, so why would I want to connect with it? And so, like, just going straight for the jugular, just like forcing that connection, is often just going to reinforce the evidence as to why you didn't want to connect in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just like you shared in your example with the fear of snakes, or yeah, everything which is really triggering the survival mechanism. It's unpleasant to feel. It's just like feeling all those sensations produced by the body to run or to fight or to freeze. This is not really a pleasant thing to become aware of. And so we need something to really get slowly back into this experience without running away longer. It's just at the weekend, last weekend, I was up in the mountains, and I'm born and raised in the mountains, but there is still something triggered when I stand on a big rock wall and just look down. I can still feel that my physiological system is telling me, okay, man, step back. And and I have two little kids, and the same. It's just like freaking out and want to run at the kids and say, stop, stop, this is dangerous. And just to become aware of those things, see this in your mind, connecting with the body. It's really challenging still for me just to feel how the body feels in that moment. All these tingling sensations starting from the gut, and even deeper sexual hormones really start to wiring up, like, okay, keep all things safe around you. And for this we really need a slow connection, like just touching the hand or touching the face, to really get something in contact over your skin, which is away from these deeper sensations, just to feel, okay, this is a body, and just start there, and just become aware of this, to really slowly connect that you're not want to run in the first second again,
Mm.
because then you will come back into this reality, which is not really happening. It's just, in my case, it's just this thought pattern of, oh, when I'm falling down, I'm dead. When my kids fall down, they are not here anymore, and it's not happening.
Mm.
And for this, we need just something really simple and soft to connect. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It's really like once you start to become aware of this, you can notice how quickly we can get pulled out of the present moment and then essentially be living in a thought,
Yeah.
like living in our mental projections. And if they're negative, then like that builds up, like consistent negative belief patterns, thoughts, all of that sort of stuff have this contractive quality. And if you're not connected to the body, you may not even be aware that it's even happening.
Yeah.
What you've shared is actually a very conscious reflection of like you being able to be aware, see the risks that are there, see all of the sensations and the physiological phenomena that are happening, and then be able to consciously like discern like the actual experience.
Yeah.
And like one of the things is like, why would you want to even connect with the body in this case? Like, we're not really selling it. Like, it's kind of that, that like you're going to keep having sensations. Like that's the thing. Some of them are going to be bigger, some of them are going to be smaller. But the thing is and like they're circumstantial. What we're doing by connecting with the body, we're essentially acclimatizing ourselves to like build a sense of resilience of like I can navigate hard things and still be relaxed in the face of it. So rather than then living an existence that is based on survival, I can start to then move forward into the face of challenging experiences and actually start to thrive. And then stressful situations don't start to crush me down. I can become aware of what's happening in my physiological experience, and then they can support me to thrive. That's the difference when we're connected, rather than like we have these strong physiological experiences and then we start to reaffirm body is not safe, disconnect. There are massive consequences of that, and the biggest one being your health. And so it does seem counterintuitive that connecting with the body is a gateway back to start to support your health elevating, but you're connecting with the thing that's supporting you, right? And what Marcus was talking about earlier is we can start simply, rather than, if you have been disconnected from the body for a while and you do acknowledge that, you do notice that, starting with, the perimeter, the simple things that you can perceive as safe to start, and the sensation of the hands, the connection with the feet, the perimeter of the body can be a really useful place to start to like really allow yourself to absorb into pure sensation, into the interoception of something as simple as your hand. This can be a wonderful form of meditation that is more embodied and connected to the present, rather than trying to meditate and be over there. We're meditating into the present so that we can then respond with what's happening, rather than like feel, react, feel, react, feel, react. It's like feel, notice, observe. Okay, I see what's happening here. Okay, what is actually true and real for me? We get this space.
Yeah. And we don't get drawn into overreaction and fighting or running. Yeah.
And look, it doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. It doesn't mean that you won't have moments where life just it gets you. It happens to all of us. And, like there are things that are going to be harder and things that are going to be easier. But we can continue to move and work through these things and work through the deep negative patterning that is driving us often, that those conditioning that we learned often in childhood that are still present and affecting our lives as adults, that then affect how we then parent and how we live and the choices that we make.
Yeah.
So that's a lot that can come with connecting with the body, but it is really a process of coming back to the present in the physical reality that we live in. So the third point is, and this is where we go a little bit deeper into connecting with the body, is learning how to anchor our awareness into the energy centers of the body, particularly, the gut and the heart, we could see the body has different nerve plexuses. A plexus is like a bundle of nerves, and those bundles of nerves in the central axis of the body often get referred to as energy centers or the chakra system. I don't use that language so much, but when we look at these bundles of nerves, they connect out and connect to our organs, then flow out into our muscles, into our fascia system. They affect our hormones. They affect our whole experience of reality. And so to simplify that, we can look at the three core energy centers of the body. Our brain is one, but if your brain's overloaded, it's useful to come back down, starting with the gut. And this often gets referred to in Qigong practices or Tai Chi or Taoist practices. There's the lower Dantian or the lower elixir field. This has like a brain like property. In fact, they've found when they do things like fecal implants, where they take the fecal matter from a person and then they implant it into another person. And they do this in the case of, let's say, a person has a disease, and they take a stool sample from a person who doesn't have that disease, and they put it into the other person. The person that receives that matter then starts to take on the properties of the donor, and it can literally heal different diseases. But not only that, they've found that they can start to then take on different personality attributes that were present, because the gut, our whole, like, our personality can be affected by the presence of the microbiome in our gut. So there's a lot more going on than what we think, and it has a brain-like capacity, and so does our heart as well. It's the biggest electromagnetic field in the whole body. So we'll maybe talk about how we can start to connect with them. Do you want to add anything to that, Marcus?
No, I think all is said, and in a way, it's just what we shared in our experiences. You can really feel the sensations also going on in those eras. Like standing on a rock wall for me, I was really feel the sensation coming up from the gut, just to keep me safe.
Yeah.
And what we are talking about here, Benny was using the example of snake. I was using the example of standing on a rock wall. These are often scenarios where people can see, oh yeah, this is happening. But we also have to become aware of that this is happening in our daily life, where the threat is not that obvious.
Mm,
Where the threat is just based on a past experience, which wasn't that threatening, like standing in front of a snake. It's just these subtle layers to see where did our psyche really felt threatened, and this is just running the system,
mm,
just to make a little invitation to see, okay, where in my daily life is the controller kicking in and trying to keep me safe.
mm.
If it's not really that obvious, like rock wall or snake.
Yeah, yeah. Like when we're working with the gut, like we've all heard your gut instinct,
Yeah,
your gut impulse. And when we're connecting with this center, initially, you know, we may be, and the gut can get blocked when our survival feels threatened, as Marcus was saying, when we feel insecure, when
yeah,
we're going through different challenges that affect our security, can be food, water, shelter, finances, work, all of these baser needs can really be related to connecting with this lower center of the body. And it radiates out and works with the base of the spine all the way up to the solar plexus, which is kind of like the fear center of the body. And this is sort of at the lower levels of existing. Like what we're talking about here is becoming aware of this area of the body and noticing, does it, like, how does it feel? Does it feel blocked? You know, does it feel alive? Like, is there fluid circulating in the area? What's the temperature there? You know, all of these sorts of things. Does it bring up certain strong emotions? All of these things can be present as we connect with the gut center. It's like, imagine that all of the stuff could be happening, but the way that when you're anchored in your gut, it's like, okay, even though everything on the outside says that I should be worried and stressed and blown off center, I can anchor back in and see that I have power in this, you know, and that's one of the core things. So that's like a very big sort of way of looking at it, of the things that can happen when we just do something simple like a daily practice of placing the hands just below the navel and bring our attention down to the gut and just breathe. We're forming that connection with our own inner power. You know, this is the way I like to see it. And if you've developed a sense of internal power, then you're not as victim to all of the circumstances all the time, of like, when all of my circumstances, because like you can be living in a reality where all of the circumstances, like you've arranged and designed your life in such a way where I feel really safe and secure, but inside I still, you know, I've created this reality to compensate for the fact that I don't feel safe in here. I don't feel
Yeah.
powerful in here. And this is what we're talking about. And that's not to sort of point the finger at anyone. It's not to take away from any of these experiences. It's a real opportunity to really connect back with the core of you, you know, to come back to the gut. And then it heightens, it elevates where we live from. It's like an evolutionary process that we can go through. Now, I'm talking about this in a range of different physical and then also more metaphysical ways as well. But all of these things can come up when you're connecting with the body. So the basic process where you can start connecting with the gut or the heart center is just rest your hand or hands or one or two fingers on one of these centers and just breathe and let your awareness rest into those areas. And then if you are stuck in your head, just notice your awareness just sinking down into these areas. As you connect with them, things may come up to be processed, and then you keep sort of like this process of like, I keep going back into the center of the center, into the center of the center. You know, like when you put a camera on a television, you get this kind of image in an image in an image in an image. It's sort of recreating, you're getting fully drawn into it. And that's what we're doing. It's also a very powerful mental training activity. Because if you can center your focus there, you can actually do anything. Everything becomes more focused. Not to mention, physiologically, it's good for you too. So, the fourth point of how we can get out of the head, reconnect back with the body, is to explore movement that fully engages you. You know, rather than exercise being sets and reps, and that could be great. And it's not to take away from that, but there's so much more that this body can do. And so it's developing an interest to explore it. And so we can, some general things that can be helpful, exploring things that challenge your balance. If you're in your head and then you start to shift into something that's challenging your balance, everything has to come back into the body to balance. So it's a really fast way. If you do notice, like you're getting pulled up into here, start by just balancing on one foot or doing a movement activity that starts to challenge your balance. you'll very quickly notice you get drawn into the present moment, and it's actually difficult to be anywhere else but the present moment. So the body's a wonderful anchor.
Yeah, and it can also be just a simple thing with closing your eyes and walking slowly backward will also bring you instantaneously into the present moment. And this is often also the driver where people get drawn into, I just use the word like extreme sports, like free climbing or doing those highline walks where they use these little bands and walk up 200 or 300 meters up in the air. It's just get this feeling of being in a flow. It's just there is no other point where you can just be really present. Otherwise, it's very close that you will die. And this is often what those people will also talk about in their interviews, like they just want to be present, they just want to feel the present moment, they just want to feel free, and they just use those extreme situations that there is no other choice to be just present. And the beautiful thing what we are talking about here, we don't have to take these risks and to practice our whole life to get better at climbing or walking on a slack line. It's just the same mechanism.
Mm.
So you can really put it down into these little things like standing on one leg, closing the eyes, or doing other things where you really need the whole body full engaged. And then it draws you into the present moment, and the fear reality will just drop away. There is no other choice, then this will happen. Yeah, and when you just see these mechanisms where people often get stuck and where they really took the risk to die any moment, it's easy to do this in daily life and just live a life which feels more sweet, where you feel free and relaxed all the time, without putting yourself into death risk all the time.
Mm, It's, it's something that children naturally have, and well, if they're nurtured, if that is nurtured, because often you can see when that does get suppressed in children, when uh, caregivers are always like, careful, careful, careful,
Yeah,
and that if that has happened to you, you might internally have that, like, careful, careful, everything is risky. So we can reintegrate that moving my body isn't risky gradually and gently by starting to do simple things. And what is balance to me is going to be different to someone else. And so balance could be, like you're there on 2 feet and you just slowly start to lift the other foot, and then like you feel your weight centering and starting to slide that foot on the ground to all the way to this other leg moving around wildly. It could be balancing on some rocks out in nature. You can gradually sort of work with an appropriate level of risk factor, and you don't
yeah,
need to become like an extreme sports addict, and just then let yourself like be with that fully. Like that's the key thing. One of the key things that I generally recommend is take your shoes off, feel your feet on the ground, start to do something that challenges your balance in a natural environment, and see if you can be in a low mood. See if you can be stuck in your head. It's pretty hard. And the effects of that over time, today, tomorrow, the next week, the next month, the next year, consider that.
yeah. It's not thinking that, or stop this thinking when I'm doing this for the next 2 weeks, all my problems will be solved. It's just doing this continuously, and this is where the magic happens. Doing these little things on a daily basis,
Yeah.
and this will retrain your nervous system, like Benny mentioned at the beginning, with like getting more resilience, or train the nervous system to have more resilience in these stress situations. It's just like strength training for your nervous system, and to keep on doing this, so the nervous system is always adapting. And it's, yeah, you just need to do it, and you just need to start where you are at right now, not trying to do things what you see in YouTube or other social media things where you feel like, oh, this is really cool, I will just go straight forward into this. No, you just have to become aware of where is your nervous system right now. And maybe it's just like standing barefoot on the ground is where you're at. That's perfect. Then start there.
Mm.
And then just keep doing it, and then things will adapt and develop naturally.
And then that, like really, that final point then starts to, we can then kind of go back through the cycle, because then
Yeah.
as you start to then connect back with the body in this way, then then the controller may come up.
Yeah.
You may then have strong sensations that you have been avoiding or not acclimatized to connecting with in the body. Different thoughts, emotions, like it's all coming up. And then you want to go back to comfort land. And so we can keep going through this process of acknowledging the controller, seeing that it's there. And, this could all be happening just while you're practicing moving your body as well, like
Yeah.
connecting with the body. So like you're in that movement, coming back, like noticing, noticing your hands, noticing your feet, starting with the peripheries, coming back down into the center of the body, noticing that, letting your awareness start to connect with that, breathe with that. And this can all happen while we're moving, and it's a very connected process with what it is to be human, what it is to have a body. And so the final quote that I think is useful to finish with, and I can't remember who said this quote first, but it's essentially, we don't stop playing because we get old, we get old because we stop playing. So that's ultimately what this is about, is coming back to these things that we often forget, the things that we often get conditioned out of us. We might feel like the weird person in a very normal, uptight reality, and that's okay. It's my encouragement from one weird person to another, that being weird is the new normal. So I hope that's helpful for today, to give you some guidelines, a pathway on how you can get out of the head, come back to the body, come back home, support your health to start to elevate, and live life more adventurously.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, and see you next time. Bye bye.